Ezazalele emqubeni azikwazi ukuqonda kungani sinamakhazi esifubeni. Sigcina amaphakade aphele esithubeni. Asikwazi ukwancaba ngoba kunalezi ngxenye zethu esingaya nawo ethuneni. Ngakho kunganithusi uma siye empumelelweni singenamdlandla. Impi yendlala thina esiqeda amandla. Kithi lonke igxathu eliya khona ekuzakheni ukuhamba phezu kwamalahle. Siyimlingo yamathambo abamba isidumbu kahle kahle. Asilahlanga thawula empilweni, asibanga namandla okuthenga kwayisekuqaleni. Futhi sekunesikhathi sijikisa izintambo emqaleni. Sifuna ukubuyela kuloba buthongo baphakade esasinabo ekuqaleni. Singcole sinjena nje uma siwa asisasiboni nesidingo sokuba sisithintithe. NoMose wasishiya ebuqelweni bokulwa nempilo mhla siphuma eGibhithe. Kwezethu izimpilo zonke iziqephu bezingezandla zesikhathi zisishiya nesiqephu. Thina silazi njengentende yesandla ukhwantalala. Sisezinzulwini okanye ezulwini angazi, kodwa ngizama ukuthi kade saphangalala. Sawela kulesilwane senhlupheko mhla sithatha impilo ngamawala. Uyabona kithi impilo ngathi uhambo oluya ethuneni. Imbangela ile ndathane esithe sisakhula yaphangalala. Ngoba sigcinanga ngokusiphuca esibathandayo izandla zesikhathi zabathwalisa inhlabathi ngesifuba. Yaqhubeka impilo ohambweni yasikhuba. Besinesineke nemhuzuko esiyithole sifunda ukuthi isivinini siyabulala. Kodwa eqinisweni kumele ukhe ngejubane ubheke kusakheni, ikakhulu uma ungabazi ubude bethuba. Nina nje ngoba nathola umusa seningasehlulela. Nathi sinibuke sitatanyiswa zempilo nizidlulela. Nishoda ngokuqonda. Nale mbhalo ningangayithanda, kodwa iwuqweqwe zinganzakwethu lana sixebula isilonda. Ziyabhibha uma sizivalela. Nina qhubekani ngemibuzo. Sesiyothikisa sangayo sisalinde uzwelo lusilethele imishanguzo. Kodwa ukusahlulela ningalokhothi, isikakhulu uma nivungula ngothi esidla ngalo imbuya. Kulula ukwahlulela uma wazalwane impilo yakufumbathisa indathane yezizathu zokuvuya. Asilinyazanga inhlupheko kuphela, yasishaya impilo silinda amadoda ahambe ebuya. Kepha abasala basifundisa ukubekezela zange sibalahle. Ukuthi sasingeke sizimele izinyembezi zabo ngoba izolo basithathela izinqumo sebeyakhala namhlanje ngoba siyahluleka ukusiphatha kahle. Sesilinda isiphetho thina lana endleleni. Singenavalo lokuya esihogweni. Siyolicisha lelo langabi ngalezi nyembezi esisikhalile ekuphileni. Uma nithi izulu ikhaya labangcwele bayingcosana abayobona umbuso walo. Ngoba bangcolile abantu basifihle ngamavesi benjalo. Singcono thina asibanga nezizathu zokukholwa ubukhona balo. Ngoba usizi esazalwa nalo belusigqamisela ibanga elihanjwayo. Uma nobuhlungu esibuzwayo impilo uma ithi isivezela ubuhle bayo. Lo mbhalo awuzuba neningi labawuthandayo kodwa kuliqiniso. Awukwazi ukuba nokuqonda okugcwele uma wazalwa nengcebo igcwele izandla uze ufinye ngendololwane. Hhayi njengathi esazalwa nezandla ezingamaketango, kepha bekumele sidwebe isithembe sempilo. Kanti futhi sifundile nokuthi ngomuso elabo bonke abangakaliboni inamuhla njengesiphetho. Sopha saxakwa ukugula kwanganqamuka ngisho sesiwuthintile umphetho. Wake wathi omunye uNkulunkulu unathi njalo njalo. Sabe sesibuka ubuhlwempu bethu, inzondo yakhe yakheka kanjalo. Uhleli nje esitulweni sobukhosi akasisukumeli sifa isiphaxo sempilo. Ngiyazi ungacabanga ngimthela ngechile noma ngisamkeli ngokugcwele isipho sempilo. Ukuthi angazi ngizosamkela kanjani ngoba ngathi uma ngisivula ngabona akukho lutho. Ngakhula ezigabeni zonke zobuhlungu ngadlula. Sengilinde nje ukuthi igcwale nakumina esifubeni ukuze uma ngifika kuye ngimnxuse phambi kokuya esihogweni. Ukuthi bonke abeza emva kwami nabo kubafanele ukuzalelwa emqubeni. Ngiyabonga.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mazwi. Thank you so much for starting. I hope everybody is finger snapping wherever you are. Thank you so much. And thank you to you all for joining us. My name is Linda Kaoma. I'm so happy to be moderating this launch. I am a poet, I'm a writer, I'm a literary curator and blogger, and thank you for being here to all of you. As you know, we are here for the launch of this anthology, Yesterdays and Imagining Realities, an anthology of South African poetry. It includes 30 poems by poets who are all under the age of 30, very much like Mazwi. It is produced with the support of Total, the French Institute of South Africa, and impepho Press. Welcome, welcome. I don't know where in the country this finds you, where you are tuning in, but we're very, very happy to have you. I'll be in conversation with Vangile from impepho Press, which is the publisher of this anthology. She was one of the judges as well. I'll also be speaking to Sabelo, who actually translated the poem that you just heard by Mazwi into English. We will also be hearing from Toni Stuart, who was another judge. Unfortunately, she could not be here, but we definitely have a video clip of her, so we'll be hearing from her as well. And you are in for a treat because we have more poems, more poets for you, both via live readings and recorded readings. So this is going to be a full 1 hour and a half of amazing poetry and amazing conversations. So very happy to have you here. Like I said, we just heard from Mazwi. Mazwi, can you remind us the title of your poem, please?
Ezazalelwa emqubeni.
And what inspired you to submit to this anthology?
I think the theme that was requested, I felt like resonated with the poem, or was what the poem was actually about, because I was trying to write from a yesterday as I am moving into a reality I'm imagining after everything that happened yesterday. So when they said you must submit, I felt like, okay, this is actually what my poem is actually about. So I submitted it.
That's good. Good to hear. And is this the first time you're getting published?
Yes, this is my first publication.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Wishing you more, wishing you more. You will stay on with us and listen to the conversation and enjoy the poetry that will come. Thank you very much for opening for us. I know that wasn't easy, but you did an amazing job.
Thank you too.
Cool. So we just want to remind you, our lovely audience, that towards the end of the session, we will be taking questions from you. So feel very free to submit questions wherever you're watching this, and we will get to them. So to begin with, I just want to have a quick introduction. Vangile and Sabelo, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we delve into this conversation?
Hi, everybody.
Hi, both. Sabelo, do you want to go first?
Okay. Hi, everybody. The name is Sabelo Soko. I am a writer and a performer. I translated Mazwi's poem. Basically, he sent through his stuff and we worked on it. And there was also Tsebo Lenkosi's poem that I also worked on in translation. Yes.
Amazing. Lovely to have you. Vangile.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. Igama lami nguVangile Gantsho, and I am a co-founder of impepho Press. I'm also one of the judges for this anthology. I'm super duper excited to talk about the process and how this book came along, and just the whole process. And I'm also very, very, very proud of the book itself.
As you should be. Let's start with the title, Yesterdays and Imagining Realities. What inspired this?
So the title comes from the call out itself, which was histories and imagining. I forgot the exact wording of the title, but the call out was exactly that, of speaking about the histories of the country and imagining what the country can look like today and what the country can look like in the future. And so the title was actually just a direct representation of the call out.
Yes. So the call out, Vangile, went out in the middle of this pandemic that we were experiencing and still continue experiencing and navigating through today. And I wonder, what was the importance of having young poets reflect on our past histories and look into the future, like in the middle of this really hectic thing that we were and are still going through?
So the book itself was part of the Africa 2020 program, which is run by the French government and is kind of looking into how Africa kind of speaks of itself, how we view ourselves. And so this was an extension of that project. COVID hit in the midst of this project.
I see.
And the French Institute, in partnering with Total, were interested in putting together an anthology of poetry that represented young people's voices and also looked at what are young people kind of talking about in terms of their dreams of this country and where it can go, but also of what they remember and how they see the country. And so it was. So we were happy to come on board as impepho Press, but it was really important for us to not be getting established voices, because we hear those voices all the time. You can Google those voices all the time. But it was really important to get a sense of what is the pulse of young people right now, and how are young people viewing this country and therefore trying to shape this country. And it was also a beautiful reminder of what incredible talent we have in this country outside the lens of who we ordinarily see in the poetry landscape.
Yeah, so talking about who we ordinarily see, this anthology, unlike a lot of anthologies out there, it has poems and poetry in so many different languages. And Osabelo, this is a question for you, because I know you were saying that you translated Mazwi's poem, and I wondered, how did you do that without losing the poetics of a poem, stuff like alliteration, the cadence of the poem? How do you translate and make sure that that is intact?
I think for me, what became important, because when the poem first came through, I went through it for the first time, and then I introduced myself to Mazwi. And he sent through a version actually of the translated poem, which made it a whole lot easier because it was just a matter of knocking that into shape. But to answer your question, how I feel that, so what became important for me was to understand what it is that the poem is saying. So what is the poet trying to say? Because then the alliteration and the stuff, the devices that he uses to make sure that he gets his point across, they do not become necessarily that much of a hindrance if I understand exactly where we are going, right? And some other times you find that you do not necessarily need to switch over and translate the exact idiom as it is. For instance, it is more, if I can find it in the other language, then we can put it in that sense. But half of the time, it's more of getting to what exactly is the poem saying. I think that's exactly what it was. And the fact that every other writer is bilingual in this country, it made it a whole lot easier. Even with Sabelo Soko, it was very, very easy because it became like a collaborative type of situation. Yeah.
I love the fact that you collaborated with the poets to make sure that the translation was happening as it should be. And I wondered, how long does a process like this take? I know you were working against the clock, but how long did you spend on each poem, for instance?
Oh, as I'm saying that the process for me, I would receive the work and go through, leave it and come back to it again, up until I think I get the essence of the poem. So maybe after 3 reads, that could happen, let's say in a space of a week. Obviously, dealing with the deadlines that we were working with, it becomes slightly shorter because you are dealing with deadlines. But the process becomes if, like, let's say, for instance, Tegolenkos's poem, I read that poem 3 times, so over a space of a week. So maybe I went to it on a Monday, I went back to it on a Tuesday, and then I left it, I went back to it towards the end of the week, and then I spoke to him to kind of understand exactly if I was getting the essence of what it is that he was saying. And then from there, it's the first draft, which I sent back to him for him to have, am I actually saying what you are saying? And then second draft, the third draft then becomes the thing that becomes the final thing. So the process overall, we can say it is over 2 months, basically, just playing around with the work and making sure that you suck off whatever that needs to be sucked off. Yeah, man. Yes.
Oh, wow. Very interesting. So like I said at the beginning, we have another judge that we're going to hear from, Toni Stuart. She's unfortunately not here, but we're going to play a video clip of her. She's going to introduce herself and speak a little bit about the role of the judge.
Hi, my name is Toni Giselle Stuart, and I'm a poet, performer, and creative facilitator based in Cape Town. I had the pleasure of being one of the judges for the Histories and Imagined Realities competition, and that competition gave birth to this anthology, Yesterdays and Imagined Realities. Our role as judges was to read through the work submitted and find those poems which spoke to the theme in the most innovative, fresh, and new ways. We were interested in both personal and collective histories, and we really enjoyed seeing how writers played with the idea of imagined realities, how they explored into speculative fiction, how they reworked myth, and how they worked these things into these poems about their own histories, about South Africa's history, and about African history as well, more broadly. I think the beauty of this project is twofold. Firstly, that it's multilingual. Secondly, there is no single winner. Our goal was to choose the 20 to 30 best poems and to put them together in an anthology that offered range, breadth, and depth. Vangile Gantsho's brilliant curatorial mind was always reminding us that we are creating a whole work, not just a selection of individual poems, but poems that would speak back to and through each other. The culture of publishing anthologies in South Africa is not as big as it is in other parts of the world. And yet, what better form than an anthology to bring together the myriad voices, the ideas, the languages, and the styles of poetry being written across our many varied cultures in South Africa right now. And I think this is also why the multilingualism is so powerful. For some reason, it's still something that many publishers seem to shy away from, at least in traditional publishing. And yet there's something about our voices sitting alongside each other in the page, the way they might do, in public life, whether walking down the street or in a shopping mall, that really captures a moment and also allows us to see the many different perspectives from which we experience this collective history. Because there are many, and our ideas of it are quite different depending on what perspective we come from. There are so many histories and her stories waiting to be remembered, waiting to be written, and waiting to be shared. And I think projects like this create an opportunity for young writers to engage with these stories and histories and begin interrogating them more critically on their own terms. Projects like this also create new work so now we have this anthology that teachers and facilitators, anyone working in education, in youth development, in any kind of training in social justice, can use in their classrooms and their workshops. And so in that way, young people writing new histories of South Africa can become a curriculum for others to do the same, to start exploring their own histories. And I think that that's vital.
It's so lovely hearing from Toni Stewart about the role of the judge. And she speaks so, you can tell she's full of pride when she speaks about this anthology. She also talks about finding poems that were innovative and fresh. And Vangile, in your judge's reflection, you said you wanted to find poems that color outside of the lines. I wonder why is this important for the art form that is poetry? Why should we constantly be pushing ourselves in this way?
So I think the most obvious reason is because it speaks directly to the theme. And so we would be speaking to histories and imagined realities, not just in the sense of theme, in terms of the text and the contents of the text, but we would also be speaking to it in terms of poetry itself. So then we would be looking at the theme holistically rather than just as what do you write about, but to really kind of imagine what poetry would look like in this country, how poetry has looked and how poetry can look in this country when it reflects this country. And so it was really important. I mean, we have some beautiful texts that do some small wonderful things, you know. We have Busisiwe Mahlangu who loves to play around with form. We have I think it's I'm trying to remember there's a small little poem that's like here it is, Monolith by Chifiwa, which also does something really beautiful with form. And these are small things, but where people aren't afraid of poems not necessarily being big epic poems or long lined poems or short lined poems, but are really willing to listen to the story and let the story itself dictate how the poem wants to be told. So it was really important to get a sense of, I mean, to get a reflection, to let this book reflect not just the content and the words, but also people who are writing innovatively about this country. Yeah, I think, and that speaks true to Impepho Press's vision of what poetry must do.
Yes, yes. Amazing. Everything that you said, it definitely comes through the anthology. So that's amazing that the vision that you have through Impepho also is translated to this current anthology. And one thing you also do with this anthology is that there isn't a single winner. Usually, traditionally, there is a single winner. You have first prize, second prize, third prize. You did not do that. Why?
Because it wasn't a competition; it was a call out. It was we were looking for multiple voices, and the book is the winner. You know.
Yes.
So that's.
I love that.
So we were all trying to bring our best selves to the best book that we could possibly produce, which is the best story we could produce. And so it wasn't a competition, it was a call out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Toni speaks to your curatorial skills, how you wanted the reader to have a particular experience as they read. Obviously these things are they're very subjective, but I wondered, what is the experience that you had putting it together, and what do you think, like, generally speaking, other people will experience when they read this book?
So I hope that people get a sense of the longevity of poetry, as well as a sense of the multiplicities of our experiences. We have poems that speak to a very deep and rich and profound and really, really important oral history in this country. We also have poems that speak to how we interact with other countries. Or imagine, I mean, Notre Dame is a really beautiful example of how we bring burning and another country into how we talk about our own personal experiences. So I really just, I hope that people get to people get to to understand that our languages are beautiful and tell wonderful stories, but also that poetry comes from somewhere and is going somewhere. So poets, xa sithetha oral history in this country and we talk about imbongi. Imbongi is not a praise poet. Imbongi is a divine person who is allowed to speak authority, who is allowed to speak to authority, who is allowed to both criticize and praise, who is allowed to both direct and call back, rein in. And so we saw that in some of the poems that we got, and it's beautiful that we got that in particularly the indigenous languages poems. But it was really important that this anthology carries that spirit, so that we're able to see that poetry isn't something that comes from the West or that comes from nowhere. This is something that is ingrained in the people that we are, both as indigenous people and the people that we have become as this country. So I really hope that it gives a good sense of, and especially because it's done through a young lens. So then we get a sense of, are our parents doing a good job in like teaching us stuff? Are we gonna be able to be trusted with our children? Is there kind of a hope? Like, are things getting lost? Or, like I really think that it just gives us a nice pulse, like a very fair pulse of where we're sitting at.
Wow, so well put. Before we carry on with this conversation that's already feeling so riveting and I'm so excited, I want us to hear again from Toni Stuart, who speaks about the judging process. I heard something about an 8-hour Zoom call. Let's just confirm with Toni.
The judging process was not easy, but it was rewarding in the end. So firstly, each of us individually, in our own homes and our own time, read through every single poem. And there were about 370 odd poems that were submitted. And from these poems, we drew up our own short list of 20 poems. Then we met via Zoom, and each of us shared our lists with each other. If a poem was on 2 or more judges' lists, it immediately went into the overall provisional shortlist. Once we had noted all the crossovers, we then went through every single poem that a judge had shortlisted. So the remaining poems on each of our shortlists, as a group, we went through them one by one. We reread them together to decide whether or not to include these in the provisional shortlist. If there were poems in languages that not all of us spoke, the judge fluent in that language would do a rough translation for us and give us their recommendation on why it works or why it doesn't work and whether or not to include it. We had planned for that collective meeting to take 3 hours. But by the 3-hour mark, we were far from finished. And some of us needed to leave because they had other commitments, and so they did. And the rest of us stayed behind to complete the task. It took us a total of 8 hours straight to complete the judging process, reading through each poem, deciding on a provisional shortlist, then going back to the provisional shortlist to look at the overall selection and see how the poems worked together as a whole. I can safely say that we were thorough. The amount of times we went back and forth rereading poems, being meticulous about which poem to choose and which poem to leave out. I think the beautiful thing also is that we read every single poem without any identifying information of the poets. We only learned who the poets were after the final list of poems was selected and confirmed. And so the poems truly did the work for themselves. Some of the challenges were, one of the biggest challenges, especially for vangile, was seeing poems that we loved and that were incredibly strong, but we couldn't include them because they had already been published on a poet's blog or elsewhere online. And, the rules strictly said that work had to be completely new and not shared anywhere. Also, reading almost 400 poems is no joke. It is an arduous and time-consuming task. There was incredible poetry, and there were also many poems that needed a lot of work. We were strict and unwavering, and we were fair. I think if space and budget had allowed, we would have included a few more, but there always has to be a cutoff with a project like this. And so, 8 hours on a Zoom call is no joke. It was grueling, but it was absolutely worth it.
Sure. Okay. So that sounds like it was such a grueling process, vangile and Sabelo. But like Toni said, it was definitely rewarding for you guys. And I wonder, Sabelo, what was the most rewarding part of this process for you as a translator? You are currently on mute.
Meeting the poets.
Meeting the poets.
Meeting the poets, because I think Mazwi is very talented. And so getting introduced to them was one of the biggest highlights, and actually being able to talk to them and kind of see where their thinking is at, whether about the art form or about the work itself. So that was interesting, and also to kind of see myself in them, so to say. I was actually like this before, because there was something with Mazwi where the suggestion was that there was a point that I felt like it did not belong in the poem, because I felt that there was no reason why he changes his mind about a certain thing. So when I spoke to him about that, it was like, no. I know exactly what it is that I did here, and I'm sticking to it. That was very, very interesting, because it kind of took me back to that thing of saying, this is my work and I know exactly what it is that I'm doing. I think for me, that was the highlight.
Amazing. And tell me, how did this impact your own work? You've already spoke about how it reminded you of how you were, but how did this impact your work, having to translate this younger generation's work?
It is always interesting to read what the ones coming after you are doing, because it is easy. You can easily get lost in your own thing to say, this is who I am and this is how I do certain things, and so reading these poems and having to move them to English, it becomes eye-opening to a certain extent, where you are like, oh, okay, I am still doing what the young generation is doing, so to say, the in thing or the cool thing, so to say. And then you kind of tick those boxes to say, okay, as much as I am growing up and the hair is falling off, but I am still actually within
you are
cool,
within the coolness.
You know what I'm saying? So then you would pick that up with the work, and that was exciting. Yeah.
I can imagine so. And for you, Vangile, what was the most rewarding thing? I know this, you're very proud of this work, but do you have like a moment that stands out for you?
I do, actually. I have two. The first is Poetry Africa last year, when we announced who the selected poets were, because like Toni had said, we didn't know as the judges who the poems were written by. We just knew the poems, and I had at this point I had interacted with the poems a number of times, and so some names I recognized, but some I had no clue about until I started seeing videos and I saw pictures of, oh, so this is Olivia, oh, okay, so this is, you know, Masindi, oh, okay. And then at Poetry Africa, when some of the poets read, and I remember, I think it was Keith Lewis. Oh my God, he read, and I just like wanted to cry because it was like hearing him read was so much more beautiful than reading the poem myself. And I just like, I understood, like, you know, just the power of poetry, because it was like, you know, when you because I've fallen in love with these poems, but now, like, to meet the heart and the soul behind the poems, so that was really, really special for me to hear the poems coming through the mouths of the hands that wrote them, and then also the moment when we got the book. After all that work, and to hold it in my hand and be like, oh, Frankie, here it is, it's here, and it's beautiful. Like, I mean, you know, putting together a book is no child's play, but putting together a book in the time frame that we put it together in was, I mean, it's a wonder I still have any hair.
We are grateful that you still have hair. So
Yeah,
grateful.
we
And
have a beautiful
it's such a beautiful, beautiful book. And you have illustrations in here. Was there a call out for illustrations too?
So one of the beautiful things that Anne-Sophie and Selene wanted to do was they wanted to have illustrations that interact with the poems.
Yes.
And so the illustrators were approached, specific illustrators were approached, and they were given the same brief as the poets. And it was interesting because the poets wrote poems and the illustrators created these illustrations, and so this is an extension of the same topic, and we were able to arrange them in such a way that everything speaks to each other. I mean, you know, there's an illustration by Dola Sabeta called Battlefield, and I don't know, I wish I could show you that. I mean, obviously, if you buy the book, you can get to see it properly. But it's such a fantastic...
Tell us, before we carry on, where are people getting the book? In case we lose some people as we go.
Yes. So you can buy the book from exclusive books nationwide. If the particular branch doesn't have it, they can order it. So it's on the exclusive book system. You can also get it at the Commune in Braamfontein. We are in talks with other bookstores that do currently stock impepho Press titles, so to get them to stock this one, because we've just added it because we're launching this book today, so it's still a new book. Or you can go directly to impephopress.co.za and you can get the book. We will be having an Easter special where we will be selling the book with other titles at a discounted price, so you will be able to get it. But yeah, these illustrations are fantastic, you know. Bebo Fatso, Kinelwe, Dola Sapeta, it's really amazing.
And was the process, sorry, I might have misheard you there, but was the process of finding these illustrators and selecting the illustrations to go in the book, was it any way as grueling as the poets? The poem? No, okay.
No.
Did you have another 8-hour Zoom session?
No, thankfully not. The illustrators were chosen by Selene and Anne-Sophie, and so they responded to the topic, to the topic that was given. And there was a back and forth to kind of make sure that they are that we are able to, because it wasn't just about their creative interpretation of the topic. It was also about what works in a book form, especially a book form with poetry. So those were things that we had to consider. So it wasn't so much as guiding them about, oh no, we don't like this. So it was just, okay, so we are going to have this challenge because we're putting it into this kind of book.
Okay, good to know. And what advice would you give to young poets out there who are wanting to submit to anthologies like this? The reason I asked that is because in some of the judges' reflection, they said, they were a little disappointed that things were not proofread or edited. Some people did not follow all the submission rules. So what pointers would you give to people who want to submit maybe to another anthology like this? Is it maybe impepho looking at another one?
We've got some books in the pipeline, but not another anthology as yet.
Okay.
But I would definitely suggest that you look at the guidelines, the specs of the call out, and make sure that you do a checklist. So that you're ticking off the boxes. I would also advise that you give it to someone to read. So I think ordinarily, if we had more time, I don't know. I mean, I actually don't even know what we would have done different, because we were quite thorough, even with the poems that we chose. Sometimes we chose poems because we saw the poem, even though it had lots of typos and it had it needed some editing. We were the poem was strong enough that we were able to say, we can contact this person and we can make some suggestions. And if they're willing to work with the suggestions, then we can proceed. So we had to do it that way. And I guess that's also one of the what happens. I mean, that's a normal procedure for all anthologies. So don't be kind of too personal about your work. And understand that when an editing suggestion is made, it's for the well-being of your poem and for the benefit of the book that you are a part of, rather than a criticism on the work that you have done. The mere fact that it's been selected means that something has been identified. So I would just read, be thorough, and just like run a basic spell check.
That's really good advice. Sabelo, do you wanna add?
Yeah, I think reading and being thorough is what I can just emphasize or re-emphasize, because typos are things that you can definitely overcome just by going back to the work. And yeah, as Vanya says, that it's never personal. It's never personal. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Vangi, you spoke in your judge's reflection that you were really drawn to the women-centered poems. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who knows me knows that I will always be drawn to the poems that speak to women. And so again, I mean, I know that we published Busisiwe Mahlangu's collection, so I do really love it. But and also, she just recently won the National Poetry Prize from New Contrast for Bones of My Mother. And so her poem, Loving Like Our Mothers, is really, really beautiful. It's beautiful as a poem. It's also beautiful in form. There's also, there's this poem, Incwadi Yokufa. Oh my gosh, that just broke my heart. But these, I think that I think I'm drawn to women's stories because women are erased so much in writing about history, and in telling of history, especially when we talk about politics and battle. And so I loved how we were able to talk about history and talk about the current state of our country and how we imagine it, and not erase women, and make sure that women are a part of this story that is being told. It's always really important to make sure that women are not invisible, for me personally. And so I was very happy to come across beautiful poems that ensure that.
And so these women-centered poems, they sit alongside some really beautiful poems about Black boys and Black men. Tell me about that balance. How did you guys achieve that?
So as Toni had mentioned, we wanted to make sure that we create a balanced anthology, that we tell a holistic story. And so if we are to make sure that we don't make women invisible, we must also make sure that that we celebrate the men who continue to contribute beautifully and to form integral parts of this history, right? And also who we dream of. There was a beautiful poem about a father that unfortunately we couldn't include because it had already been published elsewhere. But we did manage to get some father poems. We have the Keys of Umkhulu. We have beautiful jazz poems, tributes to where jazz, which, yes.
I think we're gonna hear that poem actually shortly by Angel, right?
Yes. And so we were able to, and not just, I mean, we do have, because I mean, if we are honest, we must also talk about how men fail us, and like absent fathers, and how we need to demand better of our men. And so we do have those kind of poems, but we also, when we think about, do we leave the boy child behind? Sabelo Soko has a beautiful poem that celebrates Black boys. We have, I mean, I think we have a really beautiful, balanced imagining and reflection.
Very beautiful and balanced. So like I said earlier on, we have recordings of 3 poets, Angel, Basa, and Busisiwe. So we're going to hear from them. But before we hear from them, I just want to remind you, the lovely people that are joining us on various platforms, that please send in your questions to Vangile, Sabelo, Mazwi, and Masindi. We would love to hear from you, and we would love to answer some of the questions that you have. So let's hear from a little bit from the poets. We're going to play them one after the other, and I must say it is quite the treat. So enjoy.
And God said, "Let there be lights." I grabbed the mic and began to ignite, scripting on the wings of angels. I am Angel Lyric. Hello everybody, I go by the name of Angel Lyric, but on page I am Angela Mtembu. And I got the privilege of being part of an anthology by Impepho Press called Yesterdays and Imagining Reality. And I will be reading you the poem by me featured in this anthology. It's called Sounds Like Home, and it is a tribute to the great Moses, Taiwa, Mulelekwa, and of course the township that raised both me and him, Tembisa. So this is Sounds Like Home. Pen and ink failed combat plans drawn by conductors, disoluting military tactics that campaigned for attention signs and united fists. So a piano man's praying hands that were evenly placed with fingers slightly bent dance for Africa. Wrists and palms in the same class, piano hands all over this revolution, smothering minority rule. He's offering collected spirits of Tembisa raised in Ekaleni section. He mixed harmonies that moved along Kubeni roots arranging major scales down rocky streets of Mfihlweni, traveling the Bomulelekwa clan stationed in Sidibeng, where his melodies rest, producing hymns that sharpened Biko's dreams of ebony and ivory strips made in Lifateng's woods, planted in Mkatini, where the mountain shades Muriding. His rhythmic patterns moved whole notes up Mkansa hills, over Etafeni cliffs, strumming 4/4s under Isiziba's tide that attracted the moon to waves and let the darkness pass through the gates of Esangweni. He swung melancholy thoughts away from Emangweni's grounds that played the struggle on and between the beat. In the middle of Pumulong's acoustics were Tate Mohulu's genes and spirits transferred by Ejonalanga's light. A piano man noting hope in our home's name. A piano man transcribed my whole story.
My name is Mbasa Tsetsana. I am 29 years old and this is Ikatilele Ziko. Hunchu Mzansi Afrika, hunchu. Hunchu bahlali hunchu. Vumani lemvumo ethelekisa osathana. Nimdanise umtyholi. Intshaba zilangazelela impumelelo yethu. Vukani bantwana bomzansi Afrika, vukani. Inyathi ibuzwa kwabaphambili. Hloniphani oyihlo, nihloniphe nonyoko. Mamelani amazwi abo ukuze ningadideki, nidilizeke, nidalelwe amashobomi. Okhokho bayiphefumlela lenkululeko yethu. Thina bantu bantsundu nenxenye yabamhlophe. Salwa ukuze sikhululeke, siphile, siqaqambe. Sihambe uhambo lodandatheko noluphucukileyo. Yintoni lutsha lakokwethu lento ninempixano nabazali? Nixhaphaza abedlezana abantu ababenibeleka emiqolo. Iinyembezi zonozala ziphalala umhla nezolo. Inhliziyo zabo zilijaja ligazi. Intombi azisapheki zithinjwe yintombi kaludiza. Abazali bona bayalila. Thabathani inxaxheba emfundweni ngoba sesona sixhobo esakukhulula isizwe sethu. Ewe John, nawe Linda, wena dinga lethu, nawe Pravashni, masiguqule isimo senhlalo yethu, singadlwengula inxwaleko. Qopho qushumqwa, khala sithonga sesizwe. Ingqondo ziyaqhekeka ziqhathwa ziqhelwa ngamaqhinga oqhoqhoqo bayaphela ngenxa yeziyobisi zosathana. Ingaba zizenzo zentlupheko ezo? Ndithi hayi kuni, hayini kuni ninonke. From Grahamstown to Cape Town, Mdantsane and Soweto, ikamva masilibange lelethu. Nokuba ikati ingalala eziko, imfundo yona mayibekho. Izihange, otsotsi, izigebenga, izigilamkhuba, mazikhuthazwe luluntu, zithabathe uxanduva. Uhambo lweminyaka lwakhulula esi sizwe. Zatsho ingqondo, zaqokekelana, zaqiqa, zaqina. Sadloba, sadlamka, sadlisela, kwamnandi saqaqamba. Ubomi sisipho, impilo iyasetyenzelwa. Ndithi inhlupheko hlupheka, awusoze usidilize. Abo balibalekayo basayidlala inxaxheba ebomini bethu. Zikhakamela ezifuze umadiba. Dalibunga.
A portrait of my father in the afterlife. My father's face taught me how to see danger unfold. Eyes hold a fire fist, raging out of control. The nose feels uncomfortable warmth It bends the skin, meeting at its sides, the cheeks dry out, the forehead folding wrinkled, the mouth open, speaking and smiling. His mouth is the last location for danger. This is the destination. This is where he will arrive to break himself and cut into us with the pieces. The lips shake and let out a small sound. This is the part you run. My father taught me how to see danger when it runs towards me. I should have seen this man transforming to inferno, but the fire was so small it kept me warm and kept me meeting at his sides to protect him. I am sorry, Baba. I did not see his anger explode, just as I did not see you. That time you flushed the Father's Day card down the toilet because it was not a pack of cigarettes. You told me to focus, Baba. You did not tell me to fight. You gave me a class on men whose anger is bigger than their bodies, their hunger for ribs, for ankles, for ears, for fresh skin, cannot be fed a sorry. I will stop apologizing to sad.
Thank you so much to Angel, Mbasa, and Busisiwe. It feels like, is everybody finger snapping where they are? It's not poetry if we're not finger snapping. Vangile and Sabelo, having heard those beautiful poems by these poets that you selected, do you have any comments? What are you feeling? What sort of pride are you feeling?
Do you want to go first, Sabelo?
You can go.
I mean, I love it. I'm excited. We're going to be releasing these videos onto our YouTube page as time goes on, but it's really beautiful to hear the poems come out of the words of the poets, and also because these poets have been so incredibly generous, not just having submitted the poems and now they're part of this anthology, but they've also been really forthcoming when we've asked them, please can you do this for us, please can you record this for us, please can you so that we can find different ways to make these poems available for people. And they've been very willing, so I'm really proud. And also, like, how beautiful are the poems that were selected also show just like give a small glimpse of the range that exists in this book, not just linguistically but just also personality wise and with content, you know.
Yes,
it's fantastic being part of such a big project. I will call it a big project because the more you go into it, and I've been watching and following the videos as they are unfolding on the Impepho Press YouTube page. And as Vangi is saying, it's wonderful hearing the young voices actually reading their own words. It's beautiful. It's very exciting. And I just can't wait to see what some of these names would do as they continue finding themselves within this poetry space, you know. So it's exciting. It's really, really exciting.
Yeah, indeed. Very, very exciting. I would love for us to hear from our audience and the questions they have for you guys and for, you know, about this anthology. And I wonder if we have any questions. Sorry, I'm just going to wait for them to come in and see what comes up.
So can I also just say, in the meantime, that 2 of the poets that were featured in this anthology were selected for the Time of the Writer Poetry for Human Rights. And I think that's happening later on today, if I'm not mistaken, at about 5 o'clock. No, right? I think so. But so the because it is Human Rights Day, it's also World Poetry Day, which is also exciting because we're kind of like on the, I don't know which end of this COVID pandemic we're at, but at the start of the pandemic last year, we were saying in the tech run that exactly a year ago today, we had the virtual World Poetry Day because we all just kind of went into, oh my gosh, we have this lockdown, the world is kind of shutting down, what are we going to do? But if we're going to be in crisis, then let us at least have poetry. So it's amazing to see how all these different poetry platforms have responded to the pandemic and have kept poetry alive, particularly Hear My Voice, who's kind of the technical support for this festival and who continue to do amazing work. But anyway, sorry, I digress. Masuda Mohammed and Tabiso Vili are the two poets who were selected for the human rights poetry for the Time of the Writer. So congratulations to them.
Yes, congrats to them. Wow. You clearly chose excellent poets.
I mean,
it's a reflection on you too.
No, it's a reflection on the talent that exists in this country. We could have chosen more. Like, it's also strange. I don't know, Sabelo, like, how do you feel about like not being a young poet anymore? Like, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm kind of grasping this in my head yet, that I am now like all of a sudden like a next generation of poets. Strange.
What age do we become umdala? Like, you know, or what age can we no longer qualify ourselves as young people? Because I'm very heartbroken that I didn't get to submit to this anthology. I'm missing my 30s already. 20s, I mean.
I don't know if it's what age, but this particular anthology, yeah, it was like, where was this when I was like 20 something? You know what I mean? Like I could have enjoyed this in my 20s. But I think it's just like, you know, putting in the work, and these poets are putting in the work. They're willing to do the work of kind of honing in on their craft and just, you know, growing. I mean, I'm really excited to hear Masindi share her poem. I loved listening to Mazwi. I've loved just engaging these poets in there. I mean, there's a young woman, I forgot her name, but also her poem was translated by Kwazi. She's from like just outside Kokstad or something, and this is like is into the process of that was, okay, so now we have to get these translations in, but Ukwazi is struggling with this aspect of the translations. How do we connect this young woman and Ukwazi to make sure that they're speaking together and the translation is going to be the best translation that we can possibly get? And so everybody was so on board with the time frames, but willing to like do WhatsApp calls in the middle of the night to make sure that, you know, we get it in, we get it done. It really has been a collaborative process. Even with Sabelo, it was like, okay, you guys need to meet like virtually so that you can talk, because I can't help you, but you guys need to get it done.
Yeah. And it got done.
It got done. I love that. So I'm just I think we have two questions so far. Well, I guess the first one is less of a question and more of a statement. Tamron, thank you for your statement. They say, hello, thank you to all the poets. There was a line in the last poem, can we stop apologizing to sad men? They say, I missed the poet's name. I love your poem. Thank you. What do we think of that line?
Yeah, that poem was Busisiwe Mahlangu.
Yes.
What is it called? It's something to my father.
Something.
Let me just check. the name of the poem?
Yeah. A portrait of my father in the afterlife.
A portrait
Yeah.
of my father in the afterlife. Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's you like you. I'll shumayela emva komfundisi.
There's also a question here for you, Sabelo. How important is it that translators are poets themselves?
I think it is important because, like the first question that you asked, Linda, to say, how do you take the poetic devices that the poet has chosen? So if you do not have the basic understanding of those, it will become problematic to actually do the translation. So I think it is very, very important to be a person breathing and practicing within that space, so that you are able to perhaps get the best possible translation. I'm not saying that non-poets can't translate poetry work. I think you definitely can. But I would definitely say that it makes a whole lot of sense if the person is a poet himself.
Yes, I would agree with that. We are doing this launch online. We're doing it virtually. The work that you did of meeting up with the poets, meeting up together, the judging process, all of that was online. Do you think it made it more difficult because it was online and you couldn't do this process in person?
I think online, being where we are and where we are going, it was an interesting exercise because I am in Gauteng. Being able to do the work with a person who's sitting somewhere in KZN and get it done. I think it's where we're at. Does it make it a whole lot easier? I think to a certain extent it does, because you can jump on a call just as long as the people are willing. You can jump on a call at any time and get the work done. So I think that makes it a whole lot easier to a certain extent. We are adjusting to this new way of doing things, which is outside of meeting in person. But it does make it a whole lot easier because you cannot postpone things and say, the person is in KwaZulu-Natal, I need to wait for, I don't know, till the time I'm going there. So you can get things done, and that's exciting. Yeah.
Cool. Fangi, do you want to add?
Yeah, no, I completely echo what Sabelo was saying. I think, there were. I think in the process of making the book, perhaps there were times where it would have been easier if we were able to meet, like as in to be in the same room as Frankie or Anne-Sophie and Selene. But the nature of how these things are done has shifted so drastically that we really are able to do a lot virtually. But it did also make clear how there are glaring gaps between what we have and what we don't have, those who have and those who don't have. Because, for example, it's easier to submit a poem via email and on your phone, maybe attach it as an attachment if you have a smartphone, or go to an internet cafe. But if you don't have access to those kind of facilities, if you can't leave your home, then you can't go to an internet cafe. If you can't work and you don't have data, then you can't submit poems. And then now you have submitted poems and the publisher wants you to appear at Poetry Africa, but you don't have data, or you don't have a smartphone, or so we had to be mindful of things like that some people are going to be left out. So that we might want to invite a particular poet, but that poet doesn't have the resources to be able to be available for these great platforms that now this submission has opened these doors. But the times that we live in and the inequality means that they can't be a part of it. So I think it's easy to kind of go with the flow and the times on the one hand, but it has really pushed both the French Institute and Impepho Press to stand back and think about how do we not leave people behind? How do we make sure that we're giving the best of these opportunities to everyone in equitable measure? So how do we support these young poets? How do we make sure that this is not just, for nothing?
Well said, Vangi, well said. There's another question from Melanin Queen. They ask, the pandemic has had a tremendous hunger on the world of arts, especially poetry that is forever in the bushes. Is there some sort of payment for the beautiful work offered by these guys?
Yes. So the poets that have contributed, as well as the visual artists, were given financial compensation for their contributions, and as kind of an overall royalty fee for using their work in the anthology. So we did make sure that, and especially because it was at the start. Well, it was not at the start, but it was during the kind of the height of the lockdown itself. These artists were able to get some kind of money in their pockets. So yes, financial compensation was provided by the French Institute and Total to the poets and the visual artists.
Okay, good to know. Vangile, Sabelo, this has been such a great conversation. I know all of us can carry on talking about poetry for a long time, but we need to start wrapping up. Before I wrap up and we hand over to Masindi, who's going to be closing with her amazing poem. Vangile, could you repeat again where people can get this book, this anthology?
So the anthology is available from Exclusive Books nationwide. If you go to a particular branch and they don't have it, ask them to order it, and they can make sure that they can get it delivered to that particular branch. You can also go to the commune in Braamfontein, and you can visit impephopress.co.za to order directly from us, or check the updates as the other bookstores come on board. So it will, it is available nationwide, but it will be available in more stores very soon. And the book itself is just, it's really beautiful, and we have tried to keep the prices down to try and make sure that it's affordable for everyone. So I won't say the price, because Exclusive Books have their own pricing system that we are not where we can't control. But if you do buy it from Impepho Press, you can get it for 180 Rand.
Amazing. I think the points that you make, that if you go to a bookstore and they don't have the book that you're looking for, the anthology, especially when it comes to poetry books, it's so important to ask them to order, because the more you ask, the more poetry books they will have. It's imperative. Any last words about, we've said a lot about this anthology. Any last words, Vangile, Sabelo, before we wrap up?
People must just go out and buy it. Support poetry, go get the book. Go get the book.
Yeah, I mean, yes, please buy the book, obviously, because it's really important. But also, if you have a community library that is in your neighborhood, please let us know. Drop us an email at getinfo@impephopress.co.za, and we can try and organize a copy of the book to be in that community library. So this particular book is definitely a passion project. So yes, we want you to buy the books, but also let us know where the community libraries are, so that we can make sure that these poets are being read in their communities, and that poetry is being is being shared in the communities we live in, and not just like, oh, Mama, do you know that I was on Zoom somewhere in where? But they can actually go and say, Mama, look, I'm in a book here, and so this is how we write ourselves into history, and we make sure that we're not forgotten, not even by the people who, especially not by the people who we live with and amongst.
Amazing. That was the book launch. Officially, it's been launched. Like Vangile and Sabelo have said, go get the book. Yesterday's and Imagining Realities, an anthology of South African poetry. Really, really worth the read. Thank you so much for Time of the Writer for having us. Time of the Writer is made possible through partnerships with the KZN Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, Mazwi, South African Museum of Literature, the French Institute of South Africa, Mbiza Journal of African Writing, the Stand Foundation, and the National Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, and the Foundation of Human Rights. Excuse me, too excited. Like I said, Masindi is gonna close us off. I just wanted to ask you one quick question, Masindi. What inspired you to submit your particular poem to this anthology?
Good afternoon. I'm Masindi Netshakhuma. Born a millennial, I feel like there's a lot I've missed out as a youth about our heritage. We deserve to know and embrace our culture. So I believe that no matter where we are in life, our roots will always be our roots. So for the coming generation, I had to do this.
Snap. Thank you so much. Take it over. I'm looking forward to hearing your poem.
So I'm going to share my poem from the anthology, Yesterdays and Imagining Reality. The title of my poem is Bufahashu. Bufahashu, nandri na iwe mdhuru wa mwari, na uwatuli bara bufa machoni mangapa, takuwa ulitsingeshe gasatswa na msando indela dhuva tsengo. Na wabachinga bachekori bopa babutari. Zwamurova zwingerekanyuni ariri vari kadzi chachametsi ndisamarere gaseri nivhare minango yala Afrika chipembe mikanoni uri vafire vachitama navatsinda tevera ngoma rungundu hevaikudza hone ulidzedza vahashu vachibva ngeikongo hevawedza miumbulo mapungupye ndiamba ngamwa wambo tsikidzi dzisatu vahone risatu pamba maroko nadziroko ndiamba iwe mkolo wa Afrika chipembe iwe vodha dzuva la vembe iwe unotamwanga mirako na miravo takuwa uchine malende uhakede uchine domba na vamwe mitodzi ya uroipfa nga ṅwaha ula ichiuwela pasi yalira sangoma na usa uchava chipondwa chinda la Afrika nditakuwa ufare thonga uchine chifasi na chikona usina thoni savashoni ndiamba naviwo vomakadzi nani atopasa nga upisa zvisima zodzadza thava kavonale maredo nkodzi chibva zvisimani makotsi mnene ichave isiya mwinga ichiyapi godhani ndira itsuke ndirive achika muroho miwaya fumi pedzi zvingarovhuwa roriva rasiyarara namvelero naanodolindela umili wanga vadhali na nditakuwa mwana wa muvenda udivudze ufa kauchira uchifera bufahashu sachileli msanda takuwa vadhuru vachika muroho nikandi hokanda ovo makuru kuku siyarara namvelero nizvipute sarupfumo rauvinga dzuva la Afrika anga vane mukolo mudhuru wa vatonamba na masingo ndiri thank you.